let's see.
If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. A famous phrase often attributed to Blaise Pascal, Woodrow Wilson, or Oscar Wilde. Whoever wrote it, the meaning remains the same. It takes skill to condense information into the smallest possible packet. Rambling is easy. Focusing is hard.
True.
This can relate to video
It's
games.
me every single time
MMORPG
I do a
design,
YouTube video.
especially thanks to the popularity of
Hi,
a
Alec.
phrase I absolutely loathe. It gets good 100 hours in. I've been making MMORPG related YouTube content for years, and variations of "it gets good 100 hours in" are commented on every single video.
Seriously, how many times do we say when playing Final Fantasy 14, yo, it gets better, you just need to put some time into it? Once you get to level 50, we say it all the time.
Doesn't matter if I personally play for 5, 10 or 50 hours, I will always get someone telling me it gets good 100 hours in. So let's discuss this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. According to YouTube captions, I'm Josh Strife Hayes. Certain video games, especially MMORPGs, are designed to be played for extremely long periods of time, which means the veterans in those games often have hundreds, if not thousands of hours of gameplay time. So when a new player joins and says, I've got a problem with this system, I don't think this part of the game is as good as it can be, I'm not having a really good time in the early game, the veterans often respond, just play longer. It gets better. And a lot of people have told me, you need to play a game for about 100 hours before you can properly critique it, especially in
This mug is so
MMORPG.
small today.
And I take umbrage against this exact statement, because I think saying you need to play for 100 hours is used as an excuse for poor early game design, or vastly underestimates the amount of free time people actually have to play games. So let's look at both of those things. Before we begin, consider dropping a like on the video, subbing to the channel for more MMO stuff, or ringing the bell so
Definitely
you get all
go
the future
subscribe to this guy,
notifications.
he's
As
really
usual,
good.
a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon
Look
and
how many
Twitch who keep the
supporters he
channel
has,
going.
that's
More on this
crazy.
at the end. For now, let's begin. There are three main areas I want to cover to explain why the "it gets good 100 hours in" argument is a terrible position for a game to be in and actively makes your game worse. First, the amount of time the average gamer has available to game. Second, the importance of the new player experience,
I
specifically
genuinely
the
thought
first 2 hours,
casual
and finally,
gamers
the
had
implication
like
this
3
has for
hours
your
a day.
narrative focus or lack of.
Because that's how
for your
much I
game's
thought
writing.
I thought I
Let's
was a
start with the
casual
average gamer.
gamer,
Now,
and
when
I
I
played
say
for more
average
than
gamer,
that.
who do you picture? What lifestyle do they have? And most importantly, how long do you think an average gamer plays games for? Multiple studies have been conducted over the pandemic, a perfect time to study gamers when we're all staying inside gaming. And the state of online gaming is interesting. Reported on by Tech Republic, it was found out the average gamer plays games for 8 hours and 27 minutes a week.
8.5
That's just
hours
over
a week.
1 hour and 10
That's
minutes
insane.
a day. The average gamer
I
is
thought it was
also
a lot more.
mid-30s professional male and has on average 3 children.
3
Now, when I say picture the
children?
average
That's
gamer,
so
most
many
people don't
kids.
picture a 30-something-year-old dad of 3 with an hour a day to game. Most people picture a younger person with 4 or more hours of gaming time every single night. And this is one of the issues with the 100-hour argument. MMOs need casual players to survive. They bolster the player base and bring in massive amounts of revenue, but the average casual player only has 1 hour to play. If you tell them a game needs a 100-hour investment to get good, chances are they will leave. Imagine if someone said to you, you must play this video game every moment of your free time for the next third of a year, and if you do that, you might end up having fun. 100.
Yeah, I don't think that Final Fantasy 14 2.0 is a necessarily poor design. I do think it's a slow burn. I think the problem with it is that it's the foundation that everything is set upon. So what we're doing with 2.0 in the Realm Reborn story is setting the story in line so that for future expansions to come. I mean, maybe at the time when they were working on 2.0 they didn't realise that, but that's definitely what it's become now. And it's a lot of dumping of lore and getting you set up with the environment and the people and what's happening politics wise, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Hours is much more than most people will have free in 1, 2, sometimes even 3 months. So saying that you need to play for 100 hours is unrealistic for the average player. In fact, the average player will give a new game 2 hours before deciding whether they want to carry on or quit. When I was playing Warframe, there is an achievement. Play for 2 hours.
Wow.
You know how many people have this achievement on Steam? 40%.
What?
Less than half of the people that downloaded
It's crazy.
Warframe survive for the first 2 hours. You're losing 60% of your potential.
Does that say that their
player base
starting game
within the
design is
first 2
shit?
hours. This is how important the new player experience is. This is the vital experience.
Maybe I should try and play Warframe for 2 hours, guys.
To keep
See if I
playing
can
with
get
your
the
game.
achievement.
Saying play for 100 hours, it gets good then, is pointless if the majority of your player base is going to give up after 2. Hardcore gamers, or veteran players of certain MMOs, ones with hundreds or thousands of hours already invested in, often forget how much of a time sink 100 hours really is for the average person. And I find it extremely telling when players tell me to play their game for at least 100 hours to get to the good bit, but when I ask
100
them
hours
if
is
they're
a
willing
lot
to
of
play
time.
my MMO for 100 hours to try it out, suddenly it's too much of a time investment. You ever notice how the long-time and franchised players will demand others forgive their game's early design
That's true.
and insist it's worth pushing through, but then they're not willing to push through the early design
You played
of
Warframe for
others.
10 minutes.
If you have time invested into a game and you insist others do the same, but when you try to invest time into another game,
Frack, was
you
it that
realise
bad?
you're not enjoying it early on and consider quitting within the first 2 hours, that's how new people feel coming to your game. Many game companies refuse to invest in or update the new player experience
wasn't
because
for
that's
you.
not the
That's
part
fair.
that they think makes money. The big spenders are the long-time players, the higher levels, but those companies often fail to see that you only find and keep new long-term players when people make it through your early game.
I've actually
The
started
first
a
2
lot of
hours
games
a
and
game
played about
are
2 hours and never
essential.
went back to
Never mind
them.
the suggestion of the first 100. Most people won't find 100 hours free in several months. 100 hours is a crazy amount of free time for the average person to actually find. You can watch the complete series of Firefly in 15 hours. You can watch all of Breaking Bad in 61 hours. All of Game of Thrones in 63. On
Oh my
average, you
God.
can finish the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy in 23 hours. The books, not the films.
Wow.
You can play the entirety of The Witcher 3 and all extra content and missions, including every Gwent match, in just over 100 hours. So telling someone to
Wow.
invest as much time as The Witcher
I really wanna
would
play The
take
Witcher 3
into
at some
an
point.
MMO that might get good is a bit of a gamble. In 1995, entertainers Penn and Teller released the
Love
parody
Penn and
video
Teller.
game Desert
They're so
Bus.
good.
In it, you must drive a bus in real time from Tucson to Las Vegas. It takes 8 hours there and 8 hours back, and the bus lists to the right constantly, so you have to actually pay attention. You can't just click drive and wait. It takes 16 hours to finish. Imagine someone saying to you, finish Desert Bus 6 times,
Gesundheit.
and then it gets really good. They might be telling the truth. It might get really good. But are you going to actually want to invest all of that time to get to
Yeah,
the
I
good
think
bit?
there's a lot of us
Or
that
are
have
you
started
going
a
to
lot
go
of
and do
games and never
something
went back
that's
to them.
good now? So the average gamer has just over an hour and 10 minutes a day free to play, and will give your game 2 hours before deciding
Wow.
whether they want to quit or carry on. And you're saying the game needs at least 100 hours. You've lost players far before you get to the 100-hour mark. But let's ask another question. If the game does indeed get good after 100 hours, why?
Why?
Why do you need 100 hours for the game to get good? What is it doing after the 100-hour mark that it can't be doing before? When a player says
guess
a
that's a
game
good question.
gets good, they mean it changes. And there's only really 3 ways it can change to affect the enjoyment factor. Either it takes the systems it already has and refines them to such a degree that all the mechanical aspects suddenly make sense and are more enjoyable to use, or it changes everything about the systems and the changes for the better, or it sets up 100 hours worth of context and
Melissa's
backstory,
like
and
crazy.
now things make sense and the story gets
Endgame
good.
equals get
All of
good.
these have their issues.
Not
If
necessarily.
your game takes 100 hours for the mechanics in it to become refined and enjoyable enough to be engaging and fun, then why are you actively choosing to keep the opening 100 hours, which you have admitted are subpar? Why on earth would you actively force a new player to slog through the worst part of your game first before letting them get to the good part? A game isn't a job, and the majority of your player base will not want to treat your game as a second job. It's not a trial you must pass, it's a recreational hobby. If you as a game designer have a 100-hour-long game but only the final 2 hours are as good as you can make them and as fun as they can be, then what you have is a 2-hour-long game with 98 hours of intro crap.
See, this is the same with some shows that you watch. What was the show I was watching recently and I just gave up on it? It was just so boring. But then everybody else would say, no, but it gets better, and it's like, but you need to pull me in at the beginning, otherwise what's the point?
Trim the excess off and place quality over quantity. MMOs know the early game can suck, which is why they sell boosts, and people get angry at people when they buy boosts, but consider this. Let's redirect your anger toward the game design and not the players, because when long-term players discover new players have the ability to pay to boost through the content, they often get angry. But why? Why anger? Why annoyance? Is it because you feel the playing of the game is a rite of passage, a trial that you completed and therefore others must as well? Because if the early game was legitimately fun and enjoyable and great for you and someone boosts through it, you should feel sorry for them.
This is what, see, when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, when it comes to boosting, I don't give a shit if you boost a class, right? See, if you go straight to 70 on a job, I don't give a shit. That's on you, because you won't understand exactly how to play your job, right? Because you haven't started from the beginning, but you could pick it up fairly quickly. There's no denying that. But when it comes from the story, I don't believe in boosting past the story, like story skipping completely, unless it's an alt, because there's so much story that you're missing and setup and lore. But I do understand that there are players that don't give a shit about the story and just want to get to raidings as fast as they possibly can. But I still think that boosting past the story as your first time is like, don't do it.
They missed out on a great experience. You have good memories of it, and they don't. What a shame. If the early game is indeed terrible and they boosted and you get annoyed that you had to slog through it and they didn't, that's really malicious. You're admitting the game design is bad but see enduring it as some sort of badge of honor. If the early gameplay isn't good, then you should be lobbying for it to be improved.
When we talk about boosted 14, it's like, yeah, damn dude, you're really missing out. Yeah, I do believe that.
Yours and
I stand by that.
Vindicated. If suffering through the early game crap is a rite of passage for your game's community, don't be surprised when that community doesn't grow and pull me in for quit. 7,000 hours. Getting good after 100 hours is because the gameplay changes to a new
that's
style.
A feat in its own. That's
game
amazing. The fact that it managed to keep me coming back.
Terror when your class goes through the awakening.
It can keep me back.
And the
gameplay
gameplay of that
back.
class becomes vastly different. So different, in fact, all your training and muscle memory up to this point is now basically useless. If your game does this, why? If you have a game design switch that many players will argue is objectively better, then bring that forward so a new player gets a taste of it from the very start. I'm not saying you need to thrust a new player into a chaotic, overwhelming mess of the system from day one. I'm saying if you have decided your advanced players get to experience something awesome, then your new players should be working toward that from the start, not experiencing
it's a different experience compared to WoW.
For the first 100 hours.
Completely different experience compared to WoW.
Hundreds of hours worth of
the story's not as important for them,
such as context or characterization or world building. Skilled world building.
At least it sounds. At least that's the general feedback I got.
Of gameplay, the audio or the visual mediums, the voiceover lines, or the
gameplay
the
story
itself.
Was secondary. Yeah.
If you need 100 hours worth of setup for a payoff, it needs to be the greatest payoff in all of gaming, because you are literally taking more time to set your story up. Imagine getting a boost to 70, then doing loads of level 70 content and getting Sistash and realizing you have no skills. And as the quote at the start mentioned, take more time to write a shorter letter. So the next time you tell someone it gets good after 100 hours, please remember, if you actually want to attract new players to your game or convince new people to play it, this is a terrible thing to say. You are not helping your own cause, because the average person has just over 1 hour a day to play and will not enjoy the idea of investing 100 hours into something they might not even enjoy.
Quinn69 Quinn69 was the person that skipped the story and then said the story was crap. And had no idea about mechanics or anything like that because he just boosted straight past it. He didn't give a shit. So yeah. You skipped the story and the story was crap. Ma'am, you didn't see the story. If you don't care about the story, don't inflict your opinions on the story on me. Yeah, there is people that do that, and Quinn69 was definitely the main one that got like attention from that. main thing was boost. Sure, you can boost, that's fine, but don't try and critique the story if you skip 80% of it. Exactly, yeah. I agree with that. Skipping a story, then complaining you don't like it. You have no idea what's going on. I know, there's people that do that, it's crazy.
100 hours to get good is basically saying to someone, do you want to dedicate
after 10 years
there
you're a cog in someone else's story?
Enjoying this? They will on
Hear
average
your story.
invest
Some
2
people don't
hours
care. I
into your
personally do,
game,
yeah.
and they will leave if it doesn't engage them. If your game takes 100 hours to get good, you are actively saying the first 100 hours is a subpar quality product compared to the rest. So why on earth are you keeping it, and why are you making it the first thing that potential new players to your franchise see? You are putting your worst foot forward. If your game changes after 100 hours in to suddenly get fun, just put that fun at the front and start with it. If you are not able to build an engaging, involved narrative, story, or world within 100 hours, sit down with your writing team.
I think the good thing about 14 is you're involved in it straight away.
Gets good after 100 hours isn't a positive description of your game. You're telling a new player they will need to experience
Limit Max is doing his fine. He doesn't care about the story even in WoW, so boosting is fine in his case, and he's still having fun. Well, that's fair enough.
Changes in the late game are completely irrelevant 100 hours, because it won't matter what they do in those anyway. If you need 100 hours to set a narrative up, you need to condense your story down. When you say to someone it gets good after 100 hours, that's not a positive for your game design.
Agreed,
so if you want new players to experience your game and stick with it, the next time you're telling someone it gets good 100 hours in, just stop and ask yourself, why? Why do you feel the need to tell this to them? Why do you need to experience 100 hours of low quality game before the good bit happens? And if you're making a game, remember, you've got 2 hours to grab and hold someone's attention and then remain consistently high quality. If eventually you realise your early game is weak compared to your late game because you as a developer have improved and your quality has increased, change your early game to match your late game's quality. I guarantee you will notice an increase in players and revenue if you do. Sorry this video dragged on longer than it needed to. If I had longer to make it, I would have written a shorter script. Cheers for watching.
See, do you know what's interesting, right? It's like, I hear... What was that I was going to say there? It's like, I hear a lot of complaints with people saying not necessarily 14, right, but in other games, they're doing this for the casual player base. They're making the game all set up for the casual player base. It's like, what about us hardcore people? And it's like, you need to remember, dude, like, most of your gamers are casual, and like Josh said, like, they've only got like 2 hours to like get a grip of your game in an hour a night. So like, what are you meant to do? Game developers need to keep that in mind. You feel like this guy's put a lot of ownership in the game and players of the game? No, it's not about... No. I don't think he's doing that. No, I would disagree with that, because what he's explaining is that there are people that will essentially say, oh, you just need to keep going and it will get better. And what that is they're saying, get to a point where, I guess, where something changes in the game, whether it's something that clicks into place, whether it's something that mechanics change. And if you turn around and said to someone, you have to play 100 hours of this game before like the game gets any good, then it's like, why is that? Is it because the game is shit and it's set up? And if it is, that's the developer, that's the dev team's got to fix that. That's got nothing to do with the player base, but it's how the player base reacts to it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, MSQ got trimmed down. Yeah, of course. Try to say come up with a better selling point. Yeah, explain it's the first book of a 10-book series. The point is, why does the game only get good 100 hours in? Why doesn't it start good? Exactly. Players suffer through 100 hours. Should it be a badge of honor? Exactly. I think we're all guilty of saying it at some point. I don't think I've said 100 hours before, but yeah. Well, that's it. Like, I always say, like, get to level 50, because level 50, the game will open up for you. And the reason why I say that is because lore-wise, obviously, you've got the full setup at that point. Level 50, you have a lot of your skill set as well. I mean, level 30, you start with your job. You move from a class to a job and you've got your soul stone and stuff, your job stone. But level 50 is where it really starts to feel a bit more of a well-rounded job. And you have like the first set of your stories and stuff for your job as well. You can learn to fly. MSQ really like starts to like pick up, because what happens at level 50 is you come to the end of the base game, and I think having that lore background, the story, and you know, meeting all the people, and you've traveled through all the different areas, that really does set up for everything to go forward. But does that mean that it's set up well? Absolutely not. A Realm Reborn still needs some work, but it's like, how do you trim some of that fat if the fat is important? Do you know what I mean? Level 50 is where you get proper rotation. That's true.